Lamborghini makes some of the most exotic and expensive sports cars in the world, boasting annual revenues of over $2 billion. Their cars are purchased by the wealthy elite, celebrities, and billionaires. And yet, this $11 billion empire was founded by a humble farm boy whose father scolded him for tinkering with tractors instead of working on the farm. After being a prisoner of war, losing his wife during childbirth, and being insulted by Ferrari himself, he used pure psychological determination to build not one, but 3 different billion-dollar businesses. Today, you'll discover the exact wealth psychology that transformed Ferruccio Lamborghini from a broke farmer into one of history's greatest entrepreneurs. This is the psychology behind Lamborghini's empire. Welcome to the Wealth Mind, where psychology meets prosperity. Ferruccio Lamborghini was born in 1916 in a quiet Italian village called Renazzo. Italy was recovering from World War I, facing food shortages and widespread poverty. The Lamborghini family survived through their small vineyard, which Ferruccio's father, Antonio, considered the family's sacred legacy. But then everything changed when Antonio brought home an old, unreliable tractor. While most people saw a broken machine, young Ferruccio saw opportunity. He became obsessed with understanding how it worked, spending hours taking it apart and rebuilding it. This reveals the first wealth psychology principle. Curiosity creates wealth opportunities that others miss. His father expected Ferruccio to continue the family vineyard tradition, but Ferruccio's mind was wired differently. He yearned for a life where he could build and innovate, not just maintain what already existed. The psychology lesson. Wealthy people don't follow prescribed paths. They follow their curiosity, even when it conflicts with family expectations or social norms. When Ferruccio finally asked his father for permission to study engineering instead of farming, it was one of the most psychologically difficult conversations of his life. The vineyard had been passed down for generations, and as the oldest son, tradition demanded he continue it. But Antonio eventually realized there was no changing his son's mind. This demonstrates the second wealth psychology principle, conviction psychology. When you're certain about your path, others can sense that certainty and eventually support you. Ferruccio left to study industrial design at the Fratelli Taddea Technical Institute, then trained with a master blacksmith, learning ironwork and welding secrets that would later define his wealth-building career. By age 18, he returned home and opened his first mechanical workshop with a friend. The psychology behind early success. Ferruccio didn't wait for permission to start building wealth. He combined his technical education with practical experience and immediately began solving problems for others. For the next few years, he lived contentedly fixing tractors and machinery. In his spare time, he would buy and restore old vehicles just for the pleasure of driving them. But then World War II erupted, and Ferruccio's wealth psychology would be tested in ways he never imagined. In 1940, Ferruccio was drafted into the Royal Italian Air Force. Instead of combat, the army recognized his mechanical talents and sent him to repair military vehicles on the Greek island of Rhodes. By 1943, Italy surrendered, but Hitler had anticipated this betrayal. German forces seized the island and captured all Italian troops. Here's where Ferruccio's wealth psychology shines. Instead of accepting defeat, he convinced the Germans to let him open a mechanical workshop on the island. This reveals the third wealth psychology principle. Opportunistic thinking. Wealthy people find business opportunities even in the worst circumstances. When Allied forces took control of Rhodes in 1945, Ferruccio was imprisoned again. But once more, his technical skills were recognized, and he was put to work maintaining Allied vehicles. The psychology of skill-based wealth. No matter who was in power, Italians, Germans, or Allies, Ferruccio's mechanical expertise made him valuable. This teaches us that skill-based wealth is recession-proof and regime-proof. After the war, he returned to Italy to find the economy shattered and the currency collapsed. Most people saw only devastation, but Ferruccio saw opportunity. He set up a workshop repairing whatever vehicles he could find, using skills learned from Italian, German, and Allied military equipment. The fourth wealth psychology principle, crisis creates the biggest wealth opportunities for those psychologically prepared to act. In 1947, Ferruccio married Clelia, a young woman he'd fallen in love with during the war. When she gave birth to their son Tonino, Ferruccio experienced joy unlike anything he'd ever felt. But that joy became devastating loss when Clelia died during childbirth. This tragedy could have destroyed him. Instead, it forged the psychological steel that would drive his future wealth building. Ferruccio fell into deep depression but buried himself in work, using labor as therapy to process his grief. The psychology of pain-driven success. Many wealthy entrepreneurs are driven by deep emotional pain that they channel into business obsession. Pain becomes fuel for relentless work. One day, Ferruccio received an urgent message from his father. The vineyard tractor had broken down. As Ferruccio worked on the machine, he listened to his father's frustrations. Fuel costs were unbearable, tractors were unreliable, and replacement parts were extremely expensive. That's when the wealth psychology breakthrough happened. Ferruccio realized it wasn't just his father struggling. Thousands of farmers across Italy were trapped in the same expensive, unreliable situation. The fifth wealth psychology principle. Individual problems are market opportunities. One person's frustration represents thousands of potential customers. Italy desperately needed agricultural production to rebuild after the war, but tractors had become prohibitively expensive. Steel and manufacturing costs had skyrocketed, and fuel prices made operating machinery nearly impossible for most farmers. Ferruccio's solution psychology. Instead of complaining about the problem, he decided to solve it entirely. He attended government auctions selling surplus military equipment. Using his experience with Allied and Axis vehicles, he purchased an old British Morris engine for a fraction of new engine costs. In his workshop, Ferruccio modified the engine with a fuel atomizer, a brilliant innovation that allowed tractors to start with gasoline, then switch to cheaper diesel fuel once running. This demonstrates the sixth wealth psychology principle: innovation through constraint. Limited resources force creative solutions that become competitive advantages. Using smaller frames and repurposed military parts, Ferruccio built his first tractor after months of restless work. His father was the first to test it. Initially skeptical, Antonio's doubts vanished after taking it for a spin. The tractor was efficient, powerful, and economical. Antonio began showing it to neighbors, and word spread like wildfire. Within weeks, farmers from nearby villages were knocking on Ferruccio's door, eager to buy his revolutionary tractors. The psychology of product market fit. When you solve a real problem better than anyone else, customers find you. You don't have to convince them, they convince themselves. What started as helping his father had become a business opportunity beyond Ferruccio's wildest imagination. But scaling success would test his wealth psychology in entirely new ways. Initially, Ferruccio was content building one tractor per week, but demand exploded. He was soon receiving a new order every single day. The scaling psychology challenge. Success was overwhelming him. Working entirely alone with limited equipment, Ferruccio found himself drowning in opportunity. He went to the bank for a loan. The conservative banks rejected him, especially during economic uncertainty. Meanwhile, orders kept pouring in. Customers grew impatient. Pressure was building. This is where most entrepreneurs fail psychologically. Success becomes stress, and stress kills wealth building momentum. But Ferruccio's father, Antonio, noticed his son's distress and made a decision that reveals the psychology of family wealth building. Antonio offered to put the family vineyard as collateral for Ferruccio's loan. Think about this psychologically. Antonio was risking the family's generational legacy to bet on his son's vision. This wasn't just financial support, it was psychological validation of the highest order. The seventh wealth psychology principle: family belief accelerates wealth building. When people who know you best are willing to risk everything on your vision, it gives you psychological fuel to succeed. With the loan secured, Ferruccio hired a team, purchased 1,000 Morris engines, and expanded into a larger facility for his newly formed company, Lamborghini Trattori. By 1952, he was designing his own engines, creating tractors entirely produced by his company. These new engines were more powerful, efficient, and cheaper to manufacture. Perfect timing psychology. In 1953, the Italian government began offering loans specifically for farmers purchasing Italian-made machinery. Since Ferruccio was now using his own engines, his tractors qualified. The eighth wealth psychology principle. Preparation meets opportunity. Successful entrepreneurs position themselves to benefit when market conditions change. Profits soared. Production skyrocketed. Lamborghini Trattori became one of Italy's biggest agricultural manufacturers, selling thousands of units annually. In 1960, Ferruccio expanded into heating and air conditioning, which became another hugely lucrative venture. The psychology of wealth diversification. Rather than staying comfortable with tractor success, Ferruccio's mind was always searching for the next wealth-building opportunity. With two thriving businesses, Ferruccio Lamborghini was now one of Italy's wealthiest men, but his greatest wealth-building moment was about to come from the most unexpected source, an insult. With his new wealth, Ferruccio celebrated with fine wine, good food, and fast cars. His collection included Mercedes, Jaguars, Maseratis, and Ferraris. But no car frustrated him more than his Ferrari 250 GT, the most expensive car in his collection, yet the most problematic. The clutch constantly broke down at high speeds. After multiple failed repairs with Ferrari, Ferruccio brought the car to his tractor factory for analysis. The discovery that changed everything. The clutch in his Ferrari was identical to the one in his Lamborghini tractors. He paid 10 for the tractor clutch and 0 for the same Ferrari part. The ninth wealth psychology principle. Expertise in one area reveals opportunities in others. Cross-industry knowledge creates competitive advantages. Ferruccio improved the clutch himself and decided to visit Enzo Ferrari to share his findings. He had no intention of causing conflict. As an engineer, Lamborghini simply wanted to help Ferrari improve their cars. But Enzo Ferrari was not an easy man to deal with. Known for his quick temper and arrogance, Ferrari had little patience for criticism, especially from someone he considered a mere tractor manufacturer. When Ferruccio pointed out the design flaws, Enzo dismissed him, claiming his cars were perfect and that Ferruccio simply didn't know how to drive them properly. Then came the insult that would create automotive history. Stick to making tractors and let me make sports cars. The psychology of insult-driven success. That moment changed everything for Ferruccio. Instead of being well received for his engineering insights, he was humiliated in the worst possible way. On his drive home, Ferruccio made a fateful decision. He was going to build his own sports car and make it better and more reliable than Ferrari. In fact, it would be the best luxury sports car the world had ever seen. The 10th wealth psychology principle. Revenge motivation is incredibly powerful for wealth building. The desire to prove someone wrong can fuel years of relentless work. In 1963, Ferruccio founded Automobili Lamborghini and recruited the most talented Italian engineers, including several who had previously worked for Ferrari. Their mission? Create the ultimate sports car with high performance that didn't compromise on reliability, comfort, or quality. The psychological challenge: Ferruccio gave his team only 4 months to complete a prototype in time for the Turin Motor Show. This was considered impossible, especially for a car designed to compete against the finest automobiles of the era. But revenge psychology drives impossible achievements. Working around the clock, using infrastructure from his tractor factory, they completed the car just in time. There was one problem: the engine wasn't ready. Ferruccio's solution reveals his entrepreneurial psychology. He instructed engineers to fill the engine bay with bricks to simulate the engine's weight and kept the hood locked during the entire show. The psychological gamble paid off. The car's design was so impressive that no one asked to see the engine. 5 months later, the Lamborghini 350 GT was born, a technical masterpiece with a V12 engine, 5-speed transmission, and 4-wheel independent suspension. But Ferruccio's revenge against Ferrari wasn't complete. His engineers were secretly developing something revolutionary. While Ferruccio focused on improving the 400 GT, his best engineers worked on a secret project at night developing a mid-engine sports car inspired by Formula One technology. This was kept secret because Ferruccio was against racing cars. Years earlier, he had crashed during the 1,948 Mille Miglia race, an experience that traumatized him and made him avoid racing psychology. But his team was so confident their design would disrupt the sports car market that they continued working in secret. The psychology of innovation teams. Sometimes breakthrough wealth creation comes from empowering talented people to pursue their vision, even when it conflicts with your personal preferences. When Ferruccio discovered the prototype, he ultimately decided to move forward. While skeptical about racing, he recognized that the unique design would bring attention to his brand. That car was the Lamborghini Miura. Released in 1966, the Miura became the fastest production automobile in history and earned its place as the world's first supercar. The wealth psychology impact. Ferruccio didn't just beat Ferrari, he exceeded in spectacular fashion and created an entirely new category of vehicles. The Miura's rear mid-engine layout became the standard for all high-performance cars in the following decades. The 11th wealth psychology principle. True wealth comes from creating new categories, not just competing in existing ones. Ferruccio also ensured exceptional customer service. Unlike Ferrari, whenever a Lamborghini broke down, the company would send a mechanic at their own expense, even by plane if necessary, plus a letter of apology. Customer psychology. This attention to quality and service gave Lamborghini publicity and established them as premium in the luxury market. Over the following years, they introduced legendary models: the Espada, Islero, Jarama, Arauco, and the iconic Countach. Everything seemed perfect for Ferruccio. His name had become synonymous with innovation, luxury, and performance. But he was about to face the greatest wealth psychology test of his life. The first major blow came in the early 1970s when the Bolivian government placed a massive order for 50 tractors, a deal that would have significantly boosted Lamborghini Trattori. Before the order was completed, Bolivia plunged into political turmoil, and the contract was abruptly canceled. The psychological devastation. Ferruccio had taken massive loans to ramp up production, expecting financial windfall. Now he was deeply in debt, with warehouses full of tractors he couldn't sell. Simultaneously, Automobili Lamborghini faced production delays on crucial models like the Arauco and Countach. Competitors were launching similar performance vehicles faster. The psychology of multiple business stress. When several businesses face crisis simultaneously, even strong entrepreneurs can become overwhelmed. With mounting pressure, Ferruccio sold a 51% stake in Automobili Lamborghini in 1972 to repay debts. The following year, he sold his entire tractor business to rival company Same. Then came the final psychological blow, the 1973 oil crisis. The global economy spiraled into recession. Gas-guzzling supercars became the last thing anyone wanted to buy. Ferrari, Porsche, and Maserati all suffered, but Lamborghini, without deep financial reserves, was among the hardest hit. The psychology of letting go. Tired of fighting financial problems, Ferruccio decided to retire early and sold his remaining 49% Lamborghini shares in 1974. But here's the crucial wealth psychology insight. Ferruccio had already proven what he was capable of. He had created the world's first supercar and beaten Ferrari in the most spectacular way possible. Sometimes knowing when to exit is as important as knowing when to enter. Ferruccio handed his heating and air conditioning company to his son and moved to a small Italian town, returning to his farming roots. But entrepreneurial psychology never truly retires. Even in retirement, Ferruccio built a successful high-quality wine business entirely from scratch, proving once more his incredible entrepreneurial spirit. He passed away in 1993 after a heart attack, leaving his wine business to his family. Meanwhile, the Lamborghini story continued without him. 1978. Company forced into liquidation. 1981. Sold to French brothers for $3 million. 1987. sold to Chrysler for $25,001,994, sold to Indonesian Group for $40,001,998. Finally purchased by Audi, Volkswagen for $110 million. Under Audi's ownership, Lamborghini experienced extraordinary resurgence with models like the Murcielago, Gallardo, Aventador, and Huracan. The game changer came in 2018 with the Lamborghini Urus, the first SUV to successfully combine supercar performance with SUV practicality. Today, Lamborghini is valued at around $11 billion and sells more than 10 Zero vehicles annually, with the Urus accounting for more than half of production. The psychology principles that built a billion-dollar empire. Curiosity over conformity. Follow your interests, not expectations. Conviction. Psychology. Certainty convinces others to support you. Opportunistic thinking. Find business opportunities in any situation. Crisis opportunity, psychology, economic chaos creates wealth chances. Pain-driven success. Channel emotional pain into business obsession. Problem-solving wealth. Individual frustrations equals market opportunities. Innovation through constraint. Limited resources force creative advantages. Family belief acceleration. Support from those who know you best. Cross-industry expertise. Knowledge in one area reveals opportunities in others. Revenge motivation. Prove people wrong through relentless achievement. Category creation. True wealth comes from creating new industries. The meta-psychology lesson. Ferruccio Lamborghini's story teaches us that wealth building isn't just about money. It's about developing the psychological resilience to turn adversity into opportunity, curiosity into innovation, and insults into empires. From a farm boy prisoner of war to the creator of the world's first supercar, Ferruccio proved that the right wealth psychology can overcome any obstacle. If you want to develop the same entrepreneurial psychology that built Lamborghini's empire, subscribe to The Wealth Mind for weekly insights that transform how you think about building wealth. Next week, the psychology of Tesla, how Elon Musk's mental models created a $800 billion company. Until then, channel your curiosity into wealth creation.